Hello, fellow Geek Speakers. This is Tiff, the other half of Geek Speak and Junk. Welcome to another episode of Respect Your Shelf. Today I'm going to give you some videos and a walkthrough of this small danger room. As you can see, the white styrofoam I used on the main wall is actually packing styrofoam that I kept from a TV that we had bought. So always keep that extra styrofoam. You never know what you can use it for. I've used the styrofoam from that television for a couple different projects. And you got to just have a little vision, cut off the parts you don't like, even stuff out. Here are some stairs that I made and some of the little pieces that are going to go on the door. Some of the rivets that I was gluing on. My favorite thing lately is the rivets, which are just half pearls. That was an assorted package you saw there. Showing all the extra pieces I glued in there. So that's the door before any paint is happening. So all those lines I just cut with an X-Acto knife and then ran over with a pen or a pencil. So here, one of the features I wanted to start adding to more of my projects was using lighting. And I'm not great with electrical stuff. I just don't have any knowledge of it. So I've been watching tons of YouTube videos myself, trying to come up with ideas, and everybody kept talking about these finger lights. So I ordered some, like a bag of like 50 finger lights or something like that off of eBay. And they're kind of self-contained. There's a whole way to like disassemble and solder and make a whole new thing. I don't know how to do any of that. So until I learn, I'm just going to simply use the finger lights in my project. So I've had to come up with different ways to attach them. So here I'm using one of my new toys, which is a hot wire tool from Hot Wire Foam Factory, which I absolutely love. And I'm melting holes in the top, which I'm going to, as you can see right there, I'm going to be putting the finger lights in. One of the cool thing about the finger lights is the package that I bought came in, I think, 4 different colors. So I got white lights, red lights, blue, and green. So that's kind of neat. So I wanted to make sure that I made them so that you could interchange the colors depending on what photos you were taking or whatever you were doing with your display. So here, and this is the first time I'm doing this with the hot wire tool. So I'm just kind of winging it. I thought I would just trace the object and, melt out a spot for it to sit in top. I think it actually turned out really well, especially for the first time giving it a shot. So I'm sure I'll come up with other ways to utilize these lights. But right now I'm just, it took a little bit of finagling to get them to sit right and to get the hole correctly. And also you have to turn on, obviously, the finger lights individually. There's just a little switch on the side, so they had to be accessible and be able to pull them out. Sometimes it's really amazing what happens when you have the right tools. So I was very excited to get my my hot wire tool. I would highly recommend Hot Wire Foam Factory. They're awesome. You can also see off to the left there, I have that green thing that I have, kind of looks like a table saw type of a thing. That's a hot wire table saw, which is not from the Foam Factory. Actually, I think they make their own version, but I use that a lot. So you can also see off to the left, there's where the screen, the monitor screen on the diorama is gonna be, like those little frame pieces that I made. I cut all of those on the hot wire table saw. That thing has come in really handy. Being able to cut the foam in small, like thin strips like that is a big bonus. You might also notice that it looks like the piece of pink foam on the diorama that I'm working with right now is kind of bowed. You might notice, those of you that have done some dioramaing, when you get those 2x2 pieces from Home Depot, sometimes you got to watch out. The one side will be curved like that. And it's so hard to come up with ways to use that, else you lose half of the sheet. So I kind of just made it work with this one. When you put the big white thing over it, you didn't really notice the bow from the front. You only really notice it from the side, and you never are really looking at it through that way. So I'm just testing out how the lights fit in there and adjusting accordingly to make them slide in there. Now that I finished all the assembly and getting those holes in there, and also a step that you didn't see on the white styrofoam, I actually put a very thin layer of some plaster to get rid of some of the white foam always has that round bubble texture from the little beads. So to get rid of that a little bit, I just put a thin layer of plaster. So I was just sanding a little bit of that out, and now I'm going to do my black wash. So I got black gesso, black paint, because I would run out of black gesso, and so because of that, then I added a bunch of Elmer's glue. But I like using the Elmer's glue added to the gesso or the black paint whenever I'm doing a black wash over the white styrofoam, because it fills in the gaps a little bit from the beads. So I did the black wash, and then here's the next day, and I'm going to, because it takes a long time for that to dry in the nooks and crannies sometimes. So here's the next day, and I'm going to start painting. So I have a variety of grays. I always start with the darkest color first and work towards light. And then normally at the end, sometimes I'll go back in with a dark colored wash or something to do detailing and to give like the weathered look or whatever. You kind of got to go back and forth a little bit. So I'm going to start with this darker gray color, and I'm not going to worry too much about how solid I'm making a layer. Just getting it to cover. And then I'm going to repeat that for, I think, 2 more gray colors working down. And you will see the transformation. It'll start to look like kind of a concrete that's been weathered and aged and used just as a danger room would be. Also, like the little rivet holes I put in the ground, like you just got to use your imagination. I think I made those with a mechanical pencil, because it gives you like a hole and then a circle around it. So that kind of looks like where a screw would go. Sometimes I've used an actual screwdriver, like a Phillips head, and then a circle, like a dowel, to make a circle around it. Think of anything that you can make an impression that'll leave a little shape like that, that would resemble a nail or screw, a bolt, or something like that. Sometimes it's the little things about your dioramas that get you excited about them. Like in the end, the way this stair ended up turning out with the paint on I do the hazard stripes or whatever, the yellow and black, I don't even know what they're called. The yellow and black stripes. They turned out, I think they turned out really well. I think they were aged really well. They started out really bright, and you know, when you first put the paint on, and then you keep going over, you go back over with your original gray colors to look like it was scratched or whatever. It's very exciting when your vision actually works and turns out like you think it's going to. I think that's always very exciting. And the white foam always has a little bit of more of a texture, so I just try to work that into the design somehow. And my pearls, I'm very excited about my pearl rivets. I learned that trick from somebody else on YouTube that does dioramas, and went on Amazon to try to find like an assorted pack or whatever, and now I've been using them on every project. It's very exciting. So here's the finished stage when all the gray has been painted on, and before I start doing the detailing of the stairs and adding the control panel and the screen on the wall. And then here's just some clips of the stair after I painted it. And like I said before, I do the black and the yellow, and it's gonna be bright, and I used a ruler to get it nice and straight. And then you go dust over, do some dry brushing of the previous gray colors that you had used, and that'll make it look like it's all scratched and weathered and scuffed up from, you know, people running over it. So here I'm showing how I make the screen and the control panel. It's really, I find images online that I think would look cool in that room or look like they could be in that room, and print them out, cut them up, make them fit in the holes. I do resize them in Illustrator so that they're approximately the right size. There's various programs you can obviously use for that. Then after I get them the right size, I'm also going to put a piece of plastic over it to mimic the screen shine. You can buy sheets of plastic at home, or not Home Depot, Hobby Lobby or Michael's or something like that. Or you can recycle, since you're collecting action figures anyway, normally. You can use the plastic on the packaging, so that's a free resource. This one I actually had purchased some earlier that I've used in previous projects, but I couldn't find it, so I actually used a package from an action figure to do this screen, and then for the piece of plastic that was on the handprint control panel. Now before I can attach the handprint scanner, I have to build it. So I just use these little sticks. They're a little bigger than toothpicks. They're square. They're easily cut with either an X-Acto knife or a scissors. So I just construct what would look like, well, what will hopefully look like a little metal frame when it's done, that I can attach the plastic to, and then the images on the back of that, so it'll look like a computer screen. Also, that pink thing is a nail file, just a nail file buffer. I find that that works great for sanding the little pieces of wood or sanding the styrofoam. I use it a lot on the styrofoam. I also have a regular nail file around there somewhere that's a higher grit. I also have regular sandpaper, but the nail files are easier to handle and maneuver in the small spaces. You can also buy little files and sanding implements like at Hobby Lobby in the model section. They have real tiny ones for nooks and crannies, and especially if you're doing any sort of intricate work or customizing action figures or something like that, you can. They make all sorts of little gadgets, but sometimes it's just the stuff you already have that can work really well. I've been rounding a lot more edges lately and not leaving a blunt edge everywhere. It gives a little better sense of realism sometimes, and I use the pink buffer a lot for that. It works really well on the styrofoam without ripping it up. Sometimes if the grit's too high on the sandpaper, it kind of the white stuff especially, it'll rip it up and it'll kind of shred it, which can be a great effect if you're doing rocks and stones and stuff like that. It all depends what you're trying to accomplish. But this is just tedious. It's just putting together this little tiny frame. And then I'm just using hot glue. Sometimes I use regular wood glue, sometimes I use hot glue. It depends how patient I am at that moment, how much time I have, and if I want to move on a step, then I often use the hot glue and then I'll cut the excess off. Hot glue can be really messy, but it's super fast. So, you know, it's a give and take. Then I cut the little bubbles of glue off after it's all glued together. So there I'd actually knowingly glued it to the table to get it, because the pieces are so little, and then I just detached it with a knife. Now don't do that on your regular table, but this is my work table, so as you can see it's covered in paint and such. And then after I'm done constructing the frame, I'm going to add some more of my favorite rivets, the half pearls. You can actually get ones that have adhesive already on them. I didn't get those, I just got the loose ones and then used regular Elmer's glue to glue them on. The trick with working with the little tiny pearls also is, so I'm just using a pencil right there and I'm dotting glue onto the pencil and then onto the structure where I'm going to eventually put the pearl. So I'm putting the glue there first, and then what I'm going to do is I'll wipe the pencil off and you just pick it up with the edge of your pencil. So I don't know, I honestly don't know the science behind it, if it's the static or why you're able to pick it up. Also, if it doesn't grab it, if you just dampen the end of the pencil, it'll then just pick up. See, it just picks it up. Or they can be really hard. Like, don't try using your fingers. And I find tweezers, I don't have patience for tweezers either. So it just sticks on the end of the pencil, and then whoop, once it hits the glue, it normally sucks it in. Here I'm adding the finishing touches for the finger lights. I grabbed some green ones just because I I don't know, I thought it looked like, I like the color green with this diorama for whatever reason. So I take the rubber bands off because they just get in the way. You turn them on. They fit pretty decent in the holes. And then I had to make, I mean, I suppose you could just leave it like that, but I thought it looked kind of cheap. So I made a, oh, there you can kind of see the light on the table. So then I needed to create a cover to go over it to hide the light pieces, but I also wanted it to be removable and look like it was part of the structure. So there, see, that's that warped foam. So I was trying to figure out if I could make that work or not. And I decided I could not, so I used a different piece. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I'll let you watch this. I'm just going to make a cap for the top to cover up those lights, and then I'm going to use the hot wire tool to make grooves in the cap so that the tops fit into it. And I'm picking stuff off the hot wire, but it is not on, so don't worry, I'm not burning myself. But it heats up in like under a minute. And it's smoking because I had, the last time I used it, I didn't let it burn off the excess. So after I got the lights to fit in the cap well, then I'm just evening it out with a nail file so that it's going to sit flat on the top. And then I'm going to put a magnet in the middle of the cap and then a magnet on the top of the dio so that it's easily removable, but that it won't just like fall off and be wobbly. And then I also add some big half pearls for what I hope will look like rivets on the top of that, so it all kind of blends together with the rest of the diorama. So here's the final product and all those little techniques and things. I hope you guys have learned some things that you can use in your own building. I'm gonna have another view so you can see the screen a little bit, and then just on the top so you can see the top cap and how the lights look shining on the ground. And just a couple shots from Pete to show how it can be utilized. Just want to thank you guys again for checking out our videos. If you could subscribe, that would be awesome. There's a link on the screen at the end of the video. Follow us on Instagram. Those are also at the end of the video and in the description. And just remember to respect your shelf.